Hello, everyone, and welcome back once again for the KoreSummit webinar series, Blockchain Summit. We're now in the month of March. You know, I was just thinking about March. I was just saying how wonderful it is where I don't have to change the clock anymore. Well, guess what? I got bad news. We're all changing our clock gains again for daylight savings time. I was not happy to hear that in 3 days. Blockchain has to solve that problem. Blockchain solves all the problems. We
It
need to
solves all
solve
the
that problem.
problems. World
I
hunger.
know. So, all right. So, putting the laughter aside, so welcome again, everyone. I really appreciate you guys all taking the time once again to join Dr. Kiran and myself, Oscar Jofre, on this exciting journey of blockchain and the private capital markets. But before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, Nuvei, publicly traded company in NASDAQ, who is a major contributor to the private capital markets. Not only that, they have dedicated a team that's devoted to making sure to providing the most effective payment solution rails for the private capital markets. And of course, KoreChain, the first SEC compliant blockchain technology for the issuance under the Jobs Act regulations, Regulation CF and Regulation 8 Plus and Reg D 506C. So thank you to everyone and everyone today. We are going to have the turf wars. Actually, what I was looking for, that sound in the background, turf wars, boom. All right, turf war. So, why are we talking about token? Look at that. I'm slurring my words already.
We are
and
so
I've only
excited.
had one. And I've only had one cup of coffee. What's going on? I'm
It's a
lacking
boxing
something
ring.
here. I'm coffee drained, yes. So, the interesting thing that's going on. Why are we talking about token turf wars? Because I think everybody who's following the blockchain space, and again, we're only going to talk about the private capital markets. And Kiran and I have been looking at this for a long time. So we're going to talk about this whole thing about tokens and the protocol associated with that token and the impact it's had in the private capital markets and whether positive or negative. Meaning, what really did occur? Did it actually bring value to the private capital markets, and did it slow us down? And can it really make a difference from the perspective of, is this going to be the new way in how we start putting all our assets and in tokenization? Which, like I said, it's a great product. There's nothing wrong with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with tokenizing things. And why different tokens? And different tokens are going to come from different providers. There are more of them now ever today than we started. I mean, so let's you and I go back a little bit back again to the beginning, because you may recall, and when I'm using the word tokens, it was, that all the different providers were each coming out with their own kind of token. It's going to be the token for the private capital markets. I just want to, get your thoughts on that as we move on to this discussion, Karan.
Yeah, no, certainly. Oscar, it's interesting that, way back, when Ethereum got started, its claim to fame has been to use smart contracts to build various types of tokens, right? And give a lot of flexibility
Yes.
that did not exist with Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin has a very rudimentary smart contract script, but it's very, very rudimentary, right? And then Ethereum's uh, claim to fame really has been, hey, how can we systematize that and create this executable code? Now, I think we kind of covered this in some of our earlier discussions, that smart contracts aren't really, either smart or, technically speaking, they're not legal contracts, right? But be that as it may. So what happened is that Ethereum set up a standard in the very early days called the ERC20, which formed the basis for creating tokens in a very structured and standardized way. And over the years, what's happened is that as the SEC interactions with the SEC, with FINRA, with other organizations, and there was a realization that they needed to build in a lot more foundational things to make tokens work for securities. Because originally, the whole premise of both Bitcoin and Ethereum and many other such public chains has really been in the cryptocurrency world, right? And cryptocurrency, as we know, is simply a payment instrument, not a securities instrument. So those two are very different. And so we kind of covered some of that, and we'll probably bring that back just to reinforce the distinction between the two. And as I explained to many people, I get invited to speak at many forums, and I explained that folks who did not realize the difference between a payment instrument and a securities instrument learned this the hard way. They learned a hard lesson by becoming a guest of the United States government in orange dress, and they were told what is the real difference between them and why you should pay attention to it. But over the years, Oscar, we have seen a number of the so-called Ethereum token standards come up, the 721s, the 223s, the 884s, and we kind of go into a few of those just to make some important points. But this shift from viewing tokens purely as cryptocurrency or crypto kitties kinds of tokens to something that will actually represent financial securities, and that's sort of been the background and shift. So hopefully that will at least ground set people in the historical origin of where this came by.
Yeah, and that's pretty good, because some people might get confused, the whole notion of Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin is the purest, right? It is the pure of the pure. There's no disputing the fact that it operates with no centralization. I mean, to this day, they're still going to court to figure out who really is Satoshi, or in its mystery. I think it's what makes it so amazing. But I think anything after that fact, it's only a copy with a little bit of steroid. But people talk about centralization, but we're not going to get into that. Decentralization, sorry. But in many cases, we've seen how decentralization is completely centralized when it comes to the decision making.
Exactly.
But the interesting thing here that we're talking about is the token. The whole thing is, people are, I want to create a token. I want to create a token. I want to issue a token. I want to issue a token. And then there's the token creator. So we're gonna go through two parts of it here: the token creators, and then of course the people that want the tokens, or they want to issue the tokens, and then there's other audience that want to buy the tokens for the purpose of, let's say what it is, trading. Obviously, they want to gain in value and make some money along the way. And this is where, I think you pointed that out nicely. Bitcoin doesn't play in this arena because it's a commodity. It's all itself. The token was really a formation of Ethereum coming up with a smart contract. A token is a smart contract at the end of the day. That's what it is.
And the interesting part there is, Oscar, and people may not realize this, and we always had the concept of a token, right? It's always been there. When when my girls were young, we used to take them to Chuck E. Cheese, and we got Chuck E. Cheese tokens, right? You take them to a fair, they give you tokens, and it's very interesting why these things are useful. I just want to draw a very simple analogy, and then we can circle back and see what that actually means in the securities space. One of the interesting reasons why tokens came up is that people didn't have to, once they enter the arena, once they enter the establishment like a Chuck E. Cheese or something, they didn't have to pull out cash, and everybody has to maintain cash and make change and all this stuff, right? And you paid your cash, you bought your tokens, and then you kind of use them inside. But when you go to a fair, a festival, right, like a farmers market or something like that, or a large fairgrounds, the reason you use tokens is that at the end of the day, when the merchants inside the booths, they come to the office of the fair management, and they turn in the tokens to collect their money back based on the tokens, the cash. The amount of tokens they collect actually gives some great analytics to the fair management to say how many people actually were visiting the booths. So there's some built-in check on the analytics. With cash, you never know. The management would never know, how much money who made, which of the booths made, right? So today, when you look at tokens, now you take that entire concept of tokens that has what is it, what can you do with it, and then what incidental analytics can it provide to somebody, right? But then now you add a fourth element to that one, and that is tokens have a life of their own. And that is where the whole smart contract concept comes in. It isn't just simply a token, just simply sitting there dumb, sitting there waiting for somebody to do something to it or with it. It can actually take actions by itself. And that's what the smart contract is supposed to be doing, right? And it's a revolutionary concept because now tokens have a life of their own.
Actually, and it's rather interesting. You and I, you may recall this conversation we had. For people, carbon credit token. Everybody, oh, it's one
Yes.
type of token, and you go, no, 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 Oscar, it's not just one token. And so I'm gonna get you to tell. But it was really interesting for me to understand that you can have you can have a series of tokens or different smart contracts for each of the token, or all the smart contracts together to one token, because there are different types of carbon credits, and that's the
Exactly.
example you're giving, right?
Yes, yes, and there are various organizations. Only couple, two or three of them that provide certifications in the carbon credit space, for example. And the same thing happens with many other industries. The logistics, the shipping corporations, the manufacturing people. I mean, they all have their own standards and certification procedures that they go through. They have their own quality control checks that they kind of go through. So based on the specific use case, you can take a token and tie it with all of these yeah, quality checks, accreditations, certifications, which are ongoing. And the interesting part, Oscar, is that none of these things are a one-time thing. It's something is always happening with these certifications. You got to recertify something, or when the underlying transactions for the token increase in value in the number of transactions, or they cross jurisdictions, other certifications and accreditations, permissions, for example, or certifications about regulatory compliance, they kick in. And now all of these things need to be attached to the token. And it's almost like the token is gathering all this stuff as it flows through the life
It
cycle.
is. And it's funny as you're talking, what's going in my head, I'm going, you, you know, every single time people think of blockchain technology,
Yeah.
it's all about the techie, the techie, the techie. And you know what's going in my head right now? I know most people are going to say, hey, this guy's got a lot of gray hair. He's been there a while. I have been. And I'm going back now to the early 1980s. I know for some people here on this call, they weren't even around yet. But in those days, in the early 1980s, when we talked about technology, it was the Radio Shack people. You went to Radio Shack and you put all the parts
Yes.
together. The everyday person wouldn't have a freaking clue what to do with they didn't even bother. They go, oh, that's not for me. I'm not going to sit there and weld things together. And, there were a few of us that sat in there and did it, and they call us names and all that. And I look back and I bring this back to another event called the CS. CS was only for engineers in the early days, and today has nothing to do with the engineers. The engineers play a key role. They have to make it alive and fantastic. It's the end product that matters. And as I hear you speak about the carbon credits in general, I didn't hear you at one moment say we need a Java developer, we need a this developer. No, it's all about domain expertise in
Domain
knowing the
expertise.
subject matter from end to end. And that's why I was trying to get at, from a provider's point of view, we see thousands of these people proclaiming different things to the market. And hopefully today, I mean, look, there's only a few companies out there in the world that have any strength at all. You and I, we started talking to people like at IBM. They got great, smart people. They know their spaces: financial services, pharmaceutical, healthcare. They got banking. I mean, they nailed it in certain sectors and all that. And you don't hear them talking about it's about solving the problem. And I feel like a token in a way has been taken away from people to demystify, from the point of view that it's got to be all about the tech, but the tech is useless. Am I right on this? I mean, this is just my personal view on this.
Yeah, yeah. So I was following the so-called token standards evolution, and I don't mean to point out in this in any negative way, because those things needed to be done. Somebody had to focus on that. I mean, we had the Ethereum, we had the R3 Core that did some really great stuff. We have Quorum, And there's the digital asset modeling language, the DAML, which is going through evolutions there. And there's a lot of really interesting things going on, right? But what's interesting about this is that the people debating many of these things usually happen to be the techie programmer types. And they're saying, oh, we heard that the SEC jailed somebody. We actually need a regulatory compliance standard. Oh, that's important. So now they sat back and said, this token, this standard must be, they took, for example, the ERC 884 for the Delaware corporation. It's a tradable token representing Delaware Corp shares, for example. And they came up with this little blurb that says, hey, do this stuff, right? Okay, but that's just simply a do this standard. Who's going to actually implement this one, right? And what it takes, and I remember still when the ERC 884 came up, there's a lot of discussion between various legal folks. And some said it's a step in the right direction, and somebody else said, okay, but it's kind of missing the point because you have to actually implement these things, right? And you're 100% right. I mean, all of the really productive discussions that we've seen happens not with the techie and the standard, it's with the subject matter experts, like you rightly mentioned, IBM. Great folks, right? They know their space, they know their companies, they know what happens in the space. Can they tell you which standard they need to do, which ERC or which quorum standard? No, but that's something for the tech to figure out. So, Oscar, I think, and this point has to be made, and I'd love to have your view on this one. I really think that the conversation about what the token can and cannot do and should and shouldn't be doing really needs to start with the business subject matter experts in that area, and then tech is there to figure out how to make it happen, right?
It, uh, you know, as I was looking through that, the reason I brought the subject up is because there's a company out there saying we certify tokens. I'm going, okay,
What does
how
that
do you
mean?
certify them? Yeah, so I asked some basic question. We certify them to make sure that the market knows that it was built on this and what the smart contract items are. And I go, okay, but what about who validates the process? What do you mean? Who validates the process of the token that you're creating? What do you mean? Got it. I think we're going to go in circles. What do I mean? Because they don't know what I mean. That's just it. So
Yep.
I think the industry has created this whole entire facade. Look, I'm not against tokens, but I agree with you. I think the market has already seen what the other side has been. People are discovering that, we saw that in ICOs. They were sold as securities, illegally. That was one. We saw it in NFTs. Nobody knew for sure that NFT was real, and some were, and 80-90% of them were not. So
Mhm.
people are not asking the right questions. So we need to look. Tokenization is not going to go away. We know that. We're not here to. It's like anything else. We're human beings. We look at the past, so how we move forward, and moving forward means we got to ask more questions. And when things are thrown at you, oh, you got to invest in this token, you got to be asking the right questions. In order to ask the right questions, you need to understand what you're getting into. The fact that it's got a smart contract, don't worry, it'll tell you everything. No, it hasn't told you everything. You still don't know what this thing is. You're buying on the surface of it, but you don't know what the guts is. And I look what companies have to do today. Companies today, to raise capital, they
Yep.
need to do this. To open a bank account, you need to do that. To do this, and in this, you just go to a token provider, tell them to create you 1 billion tokens. You got a lot of people that are going to be happy because there's going to be a lot of mining going on. So all the people that are standing by, eager to make this thing happen, are all the developers, and they have nothing to do with the transaction in some cases, not all, but
Exactly.
there are some merits to it. But the fundamental flaw here is, where it's building software. Let's call it what it is, because blockchain is software. We're
Of
building
course.
software backwards to what everybody else has been doing for decades. And when I say decades, is we build software in the last 30 years, at least that I've been paying attention, is that we've been building software based on the problem and bringing in the experts, and then we bring in what technology fits that model. Because if we didn't do it that way, if we didn't do it that way, everyone, listen carefully. This is really important. Everybody today would be using IBM DOS.
Yes.
Right? Or you would be only using Microsoft Windows. And people, why? Because the evolution of software was created to solve the problems. Other programs came alive because of solving the problem. They figured out that, DOS is great for this, but we needed Windows for that. And we needed Linux for this environment. We needed this for that. Like today, we have different frameworks to build different applications. You don't say, you know what, I'm going to use that framework because that's the one that I like. No, you go, I need it to do all these things, right?
Oh yeah, it's a classic. There's a saying among seasoned IT folks, right? Don't build a hammer and then go look for a nail to bang it on, right? Because when you don't find a nail to bang it on, you're just basically hitting your own fingers and mashing up your fingers, right? You're 100% right. I mean, it's important to first figure out what the problem is. I mean, people come to me all the time and say, hey, you know what? We'd like to have you on our advisory board, or we need to consult with you. We want to build we're building a blockchain. And I say, well, wait a minute, hang on, you're starting the solution. Forget that. Tell me what problem you're trying to solve. And I say, you don't need a blockchain for that one. You can use it, post-it notes to solve that problem. Why do you need a blockchain for that? And I don't think many people, especially people who are now younger to this dynamic and very rich environment of blockchain and smart contracts and all of the fintech innovations that are happening. They kind of start with the technology. It's a pretty shining light, right? I mean, they get the shiny light syndrome.
Agreed. Look, we covered it quite a bit. So today, what I want to move into now is dividing that token, because that token, we're going to divide it into two parts. We're going to talk a little bit about the utility side of it, because there's been discussion on this, and now security tokens. And at one point, they were being meshed in together. Some still believe that there's a model where the two can coexist. We'll talk a little bit about that. But just want to, for the audience, give us a definition of the utility token, and then we can go into the security token side of it.
So a utility token is pretty much a representation of some use. That's what's called utility. It's a use. You can use it only for something extremely well defined. You can use it to buy pizza. You can use it to pay for miles. You can use it in a fairgrounds. So it's that very specific use it's there for, right? And even though it's not mentioned explicitly, the general indication is that the use is pretty innocuous. It is not one of those deeply regulatory things that stand for something much more complicated, like securities or something else. A token is just for regular use cases in the business world, right? I mean, it's simple commoditized things. Just instead of using cash, you just happen to use a token for some of the benefits that you can get from it, and that's basically the simplest definition. If you have I don't know if you have a different color on that one.
No, you and I, we heard so many different iterations of it, but at the end of the day, it's a utility, as you said it. It's simple as that. What I do want to point out is, obviously, we'll talk about the crossroad between the utility and the security. So, what is a security token? Well, the word security, the way it's been spelled out here, is kind of misleading, because security is to be secure. In actuality, it should be called securities token. And
Yes.
this is, I know people are going to go, what's the difference? One's plural and single. Nope, it's not a matter of plural or singular. It's a matter of securities law. There is no security law. There is securities law, and this was a little nuance, either done on purpose in the industry or not, but the regulators did not give them a pass. They said, okay, it's a securities, right? So in the securities law side, the securities token that is being created, it's meant to be a compliant, acting. It's a smart contract that's being compliant in the jurisdiction in which you are selling it in. So what's important, what's evolved since the ICOs and NFTs, is that regulators around the world are saying, great, you can issue them, but you still need to follow the laws in our country. you need to follow the laws in our country. And so unlike a utility token, which you're giving to people because they're doing things. So an example for me as a utility token, tell me if I'm wrong, is I'm flying Delta Airline or United. Every time I use their airline, they give me a card and they send me a statement. They go, Oscar, you've earned 5,000 tokens for flying our flight. Thank you. They don't tell me how much each token is. I don't have I didn't have to pay for them. I can use them. I can use them in their ecosystem they've created. I can get a handbag. I can get some, a free ticket, but it doesn't have a value per token or anything like that. And depending per year, they change the benefits that I have with that token. The
Yes.
other item that we've seen from the security side is that on the security side, it's a little bit more complex. There is the securities law element that you have to take into effect in each jurisdiction in which you are operating. What does that mean? You need to consider the country in which you are making these securities available to and to whom. So it means that if you're selling it to someone in that country, and that particular country has these particular rules, that contract has to be there. So you can imagine this contract has to be extremely complex. So when people say, oh, yes, I have a security token, it does KYC, you can sell. No, you cannot. So we just look, if anybody who watches our webinars, everything, I know sometimes people go, oh, it sounds like it's a sour. It's not about sour grapes or anything like that. It's just about we're being realistic to what you can and cannot do. That's number one. And number two, we want to make sure that this continues to grow because blockchain technology and tokenization are extremely powerful and they can have a major impact when it's applied correctly. What we don't want is the regulators to constantly be coming down on everyone, even those who are operating, fully compliant, to be coming down on them all the time. So, this is where I always tell people that it's so important to make sure that these items are covered. And 80% of the time, it's not. It's not covered at all. And it's not covered at all because nobody is actually paying attention to it, right? Nobody's paying
Yeah.
attention to it. People think that, oh, if it told me it's fully compliant, it's all there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, no.
I mean,
So Oscar, I'm just thinking, would it be helpful to kind of recap, some of the rules for what constitutes a security and try to compare that with a utility token or a payment currency token, right? I mean, basically, the way I think in my mind is that you have a pure utility token with no money tied to it. Then you have a currency payment instrument token, and then you have a securities token, right? So there are three different types. And yeah, I wonder if it would be nice to kind of just recap maybe what constitutes security and kind of compare that with then how do you exclude a utility token or a payment currency token from the definition of the securities token. If that makes sense, maybe I can say a few words on that.
yeah, go for it. I mean, it'd be interesting
So
to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, the reason I want to bring this up is we talk about token turf wars, right? And there's been a turf war between the folks in what I like to call the open public chain, hey, Uncle Sam, leave me alone, camp, with the SEC in debating what exactly is a security token, and always the pushback from the public chain side folks, who are more freedom oriented. They keep saying that the SEC has not given any clear direction on what constitutes a security, but then SEC is saying, look, since about the Securities Act of 1933 and the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, the Howey test has been pretty standard in deciding what is a security, because people came up with all these inventive ideas, and Howey just happened, in Florida, Orange Grove land transaction. But the way it was presented was as if to circumvent the scrutiny and the compliance with securities law. And of course, then the SEC stepped in and said, nope, you can't do that. And that's where the Howey test came in, right? But there are a few items there that if you kind of take the Hobie test, for example. So first of all, there has to be an investment of money by somebody, right? Well, if you look at currency instruments, well, true, somebody has to pay for it and they acquired it. And the tokens, most of the time, you exchange cash for getting tokens in some way, right? So there is probably some money exchange of hands for just about all of these tokens. But the second test was that the investment must be in some common enterprise, right? So it's not just you, it's not just one person, it's a common enterprise that's happening. And maybe that's true for utility tokens, right? There's a fairground. You wanted a fairground? Well, yes, there's a common enterprise going on there, right? To validate your tokens and accept them, and you can make use of them. Same thing with the airlines, same thing with currency things, right? So that is also okay. But the third one is a real killer. There has to be an expectation of profits. So when you buy a Chuck E. Cheese token and go there, you're not going to get more than what you paid for. Same thing with your fairgrounds. You won't get more than what you paid for. So it's always going to be that, right? So, but in a stock securities transaction, well, the value of the stock can go up, and that's great. So that's fantastic. But now we come to now many NFTs will qualify under that rule. But then there's the fourth rule, and basically says the profits should be derived from the effort of others, not you doing something. So they're building value for the underlying asset, and that translates into increasing value for this one. And if you apply that sort of lens and explanation into all these different tokens, then you start clearly separating out, oh, that's a utility, and we know what a utility is versus a payment instrument token versus a securities instrument. So I hope that kind of helps people understand what is the difference between these three types of tokens.
Actually, that was pretty good. I'm glad you did that, because I think sometimes I mean, they serve a purpose, but I also go back to that simple analogy of points. I'm sure everybody listening here today is collecting points somewhere. Their credit card, their
Yes.
local shopping store, their favorite store, their favorite brand. I think I must have about like 30, 40 different point cards, and I got an app for it, and it collects points. And people often go, yes, that's exactly what we're doing, but we're tokenizing. I said, no, you're not listening. You all you heard is that I'm collecting. I didn't pay for them. I paid for the goods. I was given a
Yep.
reward. There's nothing wrong with that. So here is, can I make an investment and get a security token, a securities token for my company that's a security under the SEC law? The answer is yes. Can you reward me with a utility token that will sit in your hemisphere and not do anything? And the answer is yes, because that's exactly what the airline companies, every store is doing it. Instead of you giving people a card, you're giving me something digital that I can hold in a wallet. I don't even know why we call it a wallet, because it's just an app. But a wallet, you can hold it in your wallet. Okay, here it is. And they can both coexist. The only one that can trade, though, is the security. The securities is the only one that can trade, because it's been registered with the SEC, whether it's a token or in any form, and it can trade in only certified, registered FINRA ATS secondary market platforms. So it's got the venues there. It's all there. They can do it. That's there. The utility is it's the utility for the environment. And I remember when Lewis said when he came on, we've come full circle. The whole industry started with, it's got to be public, and it cannot be this. And now that everybody's coming together saying, you know what? We love public. Public, it's got a great environment. It's building a great community, and we hope others embrace it. And we're going to put more protections in place. Everybody's doing that. Polygon is doing that. Ethereum, they're trying to create better trust, not just within their development community, but they have to build trust with the people that are using the chains as well. And that's happening. But how the two worlds coexist when it comes to the fundamental item, which is, why are people doing these tokens, is to raise money. And I think that's when people were selling utility tokens, they go, yeah, I'm just selling utility token. Yes, but why is Kiran buying them? What do you mean? Why is Kiran buying your utility token? Well, because they use it in our platform. And what else? So, because I mean, another example I gave to people is the arcade. Did you know
Exactly.
the arcade? That's exactly what they call them. They call them tokens now. I went to
Yep.
the arcade the other day, and they call them tokens. They give you a little card, and
Yep.
you put in $50, and they give you 1,000 tokens. And whenever you go to a machine, it takes 3 tokens. And then when you
Yep.
win, it gives you more tokens back in there. But guess what? The one thing that but it's only usable in their environment. I'm not trading it, and then I got 50,000 tokens I've earned. Now I can go to their little grocery store and buy all these very high profile gifts that cost me an arm and a leg, and that's fully compliant.
Oh,
There's no
absolutely.
securities law operate, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's arcades, it's the casinos. They all operate under the same principle, and there's a reason why they give these tokens, right? I mean, it's to not only make it convenient for people, but also to be able to collect analytics and track things after the fact. I mean, it's a pretty common thing to do. One thing, Oscar, I think we probably need to touch on, and maybe you can speak to this way better than anybody else that I know. People forget that security tokens or securities in general, right? They're issued to raise capital, got it. And then people can, then the only other thing that investors think about it, what can I do to trade them, right? That's the only thing they think about. But what people forget, I think, is that securities are backed by a subscription agreement, or in some cases, the shareholders agreement. And those agreements have some provisions, from restrictions, some rights, voting rights, non-voting rights, tag along rights, first rights of refusal. There's so many trading restrictions. There's so many things that happen that people don't pay attention to, right? I mean, I think that's a pretty important thing that people are forgetting.
Well, you and I, we covered it before, right? Covered
Yeah.
it with CryptoKitties, we covered it with NFTs in general, but in a token, yes, that the one thing that you cannot disregard when you hear the word securities token, the first thing that you need to do as a company or as an investor into this, if in particular if you're coming from the United States, and this is really important for anyone listening in. If you're from other jurisdictions, fantastic, do what you do. I'm talking about the United States and in Canada in general. Number one, you can call it a token, you can call it a tuku, you can call it whatever you like. You can put it digital, you can make it holographic. It doesn't matter. But what does matter is that you need to file with the regulators your intent to sell these securities under a certain regulation. And in certain regulations, you'll be allowed to use certain chains. So if you are using an equivalent of the Reg D 506C rule, for example, which is accredited investors only, you can use whatever chain you like. The company is restricted to only 2,000 token holders. So remember that 2,000 is the max. So only recently in the last year, we're finally getting this open discussion. And even the industry is saying, what's the value of tokenizing if you can only have 2,000 holders? The whole idea was to make it available to the masses. Okay, then now we got a discussion. That's right, we want to make it available to the masses. And people would say, well, the regulators have no regulations for that. Well, that's not true. In fact, there's only one country in the world that allows this, and that's the United States. Today, you can raise up to $75 million every 12 months, and you can issue as many tokens as you like, fully compliant. That's right, unlimited tokens. And you can call it the boo boo token, or you can call it a coin. You can call it anything you like, and it will be fully compliant. Why? Because you'll file with the SEC. Two, you're going to be partnered with a company that's gone through that qualification process and their chain has already been qualified by the SEC. It will have a FINRA broker-dealer. It will have an SEC registered transfer agent. It will have a US bank. It will have an ID AML provider like LexisNexis. It will have all the components that the securities regulators want to see to ensure that whoever buys your token is compliant. That's on the primary. And then because you sold it as a token, now you want to trade it. And where can we trade it? Well, there are places like T0, Oasis, Rialto, North Capital, Texture Capital. The choices are growing and growing. So that where you can trade your securities token is no longer an issue. The marketplaces are there. There's not just one, there are many. The key is to ensure that everything was done compliantly so you can keep growing your business. And here's the value of using the US regulation, like Regulation A plus, 75 million. Your holders, there's no hold period, right? No hold period. You can instantly trade it. You can sell it to anybody anywhere in the world except the sanctioned countries. That's powerful.
Yes,
Very, very
absolutely.
powerful.
Absolutely. As you're speaking, there's the one thought crossed my mind, and I would like your, commentary on this one. I have a feeling that most of the battles, the turf wars that happen, not only between, the chains and protocols, but more importantly between the regulators on one side and the folks who want to use it. The battle is because the folks who want to use it, don't really understand how to select the right vehicle for what they want to do. It's almost like, they're saying, I want to use my Ferrari to, drive to Hawaii. And then SEC is saying, oh, wait a minute, you have to go through a boat, right? In the middle, there's ocean. You can't just take a Ferrari there. And it's people not understanding that you need different vehicles. It's a Reg A vehicle or a Reg CF vehicle or a Reg D vehicle, etc., to go there. I mean, is that a fair assessment of why you think there's so much battle right now?
I do, and I think part of that the industry for a number of years, it's diminishing. It's getting better. I mean, we have companies like North Capital, we have Texture Capital, companies like Rialto, Oasis, even T Zero. Look, if you don't believe me, I mean, look at T Zero. The announcement that they were abandoning all that money that they spent into something and moving onward. Um, the reality is this, that a commodity is a commodity, utility is a utility, and a securities token is a securities token. And the definitions are very clear. If the expectation for someone to invest in this thing, token, and for a return on investment becomes a security. And for that, there's an entire path. And people just need to wake up to that. And I think those who keep going with the heartbeat of, hey, no, the regulators are going to change. No, the regulators are going to change. They really do not understand how change has occurred. And I'm going to give you one example of that right now. His name is David Wheel IV. If you do not know him, you can Google his name. He is considered the father of the Jobs Act. And so the Jobs Act was signed in by President Obama on April the 5th in 2012. So most of you would be sitting here and saying, look at that. April the 12th, there it is, it's done. The question you need to be asking, David, how many years did it take you before it got to that? And that's another almost a decade of his life just to get it to that point. And even after President Obama signed it in, it took another 3 more years before regulation, Title III went live and Title IV the following year. It takes time to implement regulations. It takes time. There's a lot of consideration. There's a lot of back and forth the industry. And I can assure everyone of the following. If you are not working with the existing infrastructure in the public or private capital markets, this is never going to fly. They may provide you a sandbox and you're under this illusion that that's how they're moving. That's exactly what you're under, is an illusion. All they're providing you is a playground to satisfy, to see it, and then to say, okay, this is why we're not going to get into this. Because do you remember in 2017, oh, I'm in the sandbox at JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, and everybody making an announcement, I'm at CIBC, and where are they now? No implementation. In fact, the only people that have been implementing blockchain is IBM, but they don't make any sound. So I just want to make sure everybody's clear. It is being implemented. It is being adopted. What type of change, we don't know, because that's not the point. It's no different than, and I keep repeating the same example because it's so ridiculous. That's how ridiculous it is. How many of you go to a bank, go to the teller and say, hi, miss, do you know the deposit I just made? Could you tell me what database your bank is using in order to, to access my account? And she's like going to be, what? What? You just log in. Yeah, but what database are you using? And that's how ridiculous it is, because who cares? All the person in there, again, I gave you $5,000. I see my statement, $5,000 deposit on this day, and it's audible, traceable, and all that. It's solving the problem from the end user perspective. It's almost like we went from the the technology is shoving it to the end user and it's not working, it's obviously people are taking advantage of that because they're what do we call the silly ones, guppies that just fall in line and they get so so I'm optimistic. I see a bright future. The token wars, I think it's over. I've been saying this now for the last year and a half. The chaos of token wars is done. If you think there's still a token war, then you're not reading or you don't want to read. And there's nothing we can do to force you to read it. What do I mean by that? NFT and Binance. There it is. There's your answer. Your answer is black and white prison. That's what it is. And you go, what does that relate to us? Because it's exactly what we're saying to you. It's the same concept. SEC is going to go after anything that is not following the rule. And the SEC has made it clear there are no new rules coming because the rules are there. Just follow them. And what that's telling you is this. The rules are great. Look, just listen to this. A regulation that allows you to sell your tokens on your website to anybody in the world, and you and people can invest as low as you want. They can invest $1. Okay, how about 50 cents? You can make it as low as you like. You can have unlimited token holders, and they're free trading. They can trade. So when they say the rules don't exist, the rules do exist. It's there. It's visible. $75 million. I mean, that's a lot of money. And you get to do it again every 12 months. Every 12 months. So you're going to blow 75 million in 1 year. Wow. Okay.
And didn't they? Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. On the 75 million, didn't they introduce a bill recently? I don't think it has passed yet to raise the limit on tier 2 reggae for like 150 million, something like that.
Well, they're in the process of increasing it to 150 million. So I mean, again, I keep saying it. What more do you want the regulators to do?
Exactly.
I mean, you want them to put it on the sign. Okay, do a token. It's up to $75 million. And these are the only things you need to do. So the question is, so this is the real question. Why don't you want to do those things if you want to be so transparent?
Exactly.
What do you mean? Why do you not want to file with the SEC your information to vet your company in? Why don't you? You said you want to be, the reason for tokenization is transparency for the investor. You also need to be transparent.
Of course.
I did a challenge with my team. I said, go to certain websites and I want you to find me their CEO, their CFO, their 90% of all blockchain companies, you cannot find anyone on their website.
Exactly. Yep.
Exactly.
Right? So where is transparency then, right?
That's right. So everybody's just got to wake up. We're no longer, we're admiring the technology. We love it. You love it. I love it. I think tokenization is the holy grail. I really do. Look at the value. Today, you can have a smart contract completely for regulation A+ to allow it to be completely, wrapped around, compliant with the transfer agent, the ATS, the FINRA broker-dealer, ID and AML, completely obliviate, all of it acting with all the participants involved, and you can fractionalize it and you can have unlimited. What is there to complain about? It's here. It's here today, now. All you got to do is go to KoreChain.io and you can get started and engage. It's a and you don't have to spend millions and millions of dollars trying to pay a lawyer, try to convince the SEC to go down this route. You don't. It is the most efficient way to go about this way. And more importantly, try to remember you're going after this community. So this is the last part I want to talk about. When people say, Oscar, tokenization is about reaching the general public, they want this. And I go, really? So you're telling me the general public wants this? And here's what I notice when people want to tokenize. When I ask companies, who are you targeting? What do you mean? Who are you targeting when you're tokenizing your securities or your real estate project? Who are you going after? Oh, I'm going after those guys in tokenization who already have a lot of Bitcoin or ETH and want to start diversifying their portfolio. Isn't that interesting?
Right.
So nobody is going after the general public. Why? Because that public is using fiat and they want to know this is a real company. I'll take any tokenized real estate deal and put it against a Reg A, and the Reg A will raise more money faster with more, I'm not saying one is better than the other. I'm just saying the investor gets what they want. They get everything they need. They get their dividend. They get their trading. All of that the same way. And they didn't even call it a token. They just called it a share. And
Exactly.
here you can call it a token. It's the same. It's up to you. But I'm just telling you, the general public today, the 233 million Americans that are looking to participate, that $38 trillion, is there a merit to it for tokenization? The answer is yes, but it needs to go along with the right message and the right safety nets. And you need to be part of an infrastructure that is going to support that philosophy, not just, hey, look at that. I pay these guys $250,000. They're going to create a smart contract on Ethereum. And I got it. I got an email just the other day. Oscar, I got a great opportunity for you. We're going to do this. It's only going to be $25,000 US or, X number in bit or in Ethereum. And it goes, it's going to climb up in value over 300% in the next 6 months. And I'm like, damn it, man. That just like, I'm so golden to you. Thank you so much. And I'm going, how on earth could this possibly occur, right? But it's still occurring, and it's people from abroad, not so much here in North America anymore. And
Yeah, right.
so the turf wars, to me, they're over. They became over when Binance and NFT, which is, we discussed that already at the beginning of our series. It's where every week, as you'll notice, everybody, you're going to notice we're talking about a very specific item within the blockchain and tokenization. This time it was the token, but you'll notice that it's all wrapped up into the same thing, which is the reason there were token wars, as Kiran mentioned earlier. It was because confusion, nobody knew, or everybody thought they didn't know. SEC made it very clear. It's crystal clear, crystal, right? Sam is going to go to prison for what, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. And his other ones are going to for 20, 30 years. They're going to prison. Their whole life will be in a 10 by 10. No, sorry, not 10 by 10, 4 by 6. That's their life without a computer. That's where the penalties are going to. If you want to do it compliantly, the SEC has the rules and regulations to allow you to do that. You just got to be working with the right companies, and you got to be asking the right questions. For investors, you just got to be, greed will get you there. And if you're great, okay, it's all on you. You cannot blame, and you can't go to the SEC later and say, oh my God, I got ripped off. There's enough warning signs every single day. You just got to have your eyes wide open. The market isn't the way it was, in 2016. The SEC, and if you're missing the SEC, they're on MSNBC, CNN, everywhere. The message is out there, right?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's a great advice, right? If somebody is still looking to battle somebody somewhere, they're doing the wrong battle. I think I would say, hey, take off your boxing gloves. It's time to hold the wine glass.
Correct. And that's where, like I said, it's been I've been enjoying the ride as you and I. And in some cases, some people say, well, you guys are like, what's the word I heard once? Somebody said, well, you guys are like, you guys are trying to be the negative. We're not.
No,
I don't want to go to
absolutely.
jail. I don't want to be banned, and I don't want to be that database of the SEC or FINRA in any way. So, closing words, Kiran.
Looking at the regulations and the intent of the regulations, I personally, I'm sure you would agree with this too. There's no restriction on what you can and cannot do as long as you stay within the rails. In fact, if nothing else, those rails actually enable you to do so much more and much more safely and securely, right? So I think, it's time to get past the wars. And everyone is still thinking about, hey, we need to go to battle on this one or test the waters on something else. We would say, stop, you have the right vehicles, just choose that and just get on board with it, right?
Agreed. Just it's a time for a change. The new chapter has begun. Read the news. The turf wars are done. It's not going to be about the tokens. It's really going to. You're going to need to be asking the harder questions. That way, you're not losing your money. And not only that, maybe your company's looking to tokenize, and you're going, "Oh my God, look, I almost put in $250,000 into that project." You and I have been involved in a number of companies where that's happened. So Till next week, everyone, have a wonderful week. Enjoy it. Enjoy the sunny weather wherever you may be, whoever's getting snow right now. I'm envious because I love snow. Want to go skiing. Obviously, we're not getting that right now on the East Coast. The West Coast, enjoy. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to seeing you next time again on the KoreSummit webinar series. Till next time. Bye-bye.
Bye now.